find the midpoint formula, the first thing you have to realize, anytime you have a point on a coordinate plane in math, it's x1 and y1, right? So you have an x coordinate and a y coordinate. If you have 2 points, the first point, the x is x1, the y is y1. The second point, the x is x2, the y is y2. When your 1 or 2 is at the bottom right of your letters, it's not saying x times 2 or x squared or anything like that. It's just saying that's the second one. So if I had 3 points, there would be an x3 and a y3. It's just saying that's the third one. And so when I write this formula, the midpoint, remember, finding the midpoint or a midpoint is the middle of something. So if I want to find, or if I want to cut a piece of wood in half, I would cut it in the middle, right? So with this, the reason I'm going to be dividing by 2 is because I'm cutting a segment in half. And so what that midpoint formula says is, first off, I have a big parentheses, and I have x1 plus x2 on top divided by 2. The x1 and x2, the x1 plus x2 has to be in parentheses because you have to add those together before you divide. Because what that's doing is taking all of my x values and split in half because I want the middle. And then same thing for the y. This y is a little blurred. I've messed up writing it. But this says y1 plus y2 on top, divided by 2. If I look, I put 2 big parentheses on the outsides and a comma in between my left side and my right side. That's because the midpoint formula, I'm making a point. I'm not trying to find a number, I'm making an actual point. So I'm finding an x value and I'm finding a y value. So if I do the midpoint formula on number 4, it tells me GH, find the midpoint of the segment GH. G is 7, negative 5, and H is the point 9, negative 1. Anytime you're given your points, always label them. The first one's going to be x1, y1. The second one will be x2, y2. And that's just so you don't forget which points you need to plug into your formula. First step, write the formula that we just talked about. So that's x1 plus x2, parentheses over top of 2, comma. The same thing for my y's. Now I'll just plug those numbers in. What is my x1? 7, right? So that's 7 plus my x2, which is 9, over 2, comma, my y parentheses, my y1 is negative 5, plus negative 1. Anytime I have a negative as my second number, I'm just always going to put an extra set of parentheses around that negative 1 so I know that that's negative 1. Now if I have plus a minus, plus a negative, that would just be minus 1, right? But I still put that in parentheses over 2. 7 plus 9 is 16. So that's 16 over 2. Negative 5 plus negative 1, which would be negative 5 minus 1, is negative 6 over 2. Now I'll just do that. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. That's the point it wants. 8, negative 3. So when I find the midpoint, I'm finding the actual point in the middle. This should be one of the simpler things we do because you just have to plug those values into that formula. So we'll do number 5 together again. So I have midpoint. If you write the formula every time, it'll help you a lot to remember it. Label my points as x1, y1, and x2, y2. My x1 is -7, my x2 is 3, so that's -7 plus 3 over top of 2. My y1 is 4, my y2 is -4. 4 plus -4. -7 plus 3 is -4. So that would be -4 over 2. What is 4 plus -4? Or it'd be 4 minus 4. That would be 0, right? And that would be 0 over 2. Now remember, well first let's say -4 divided by 2 is -2. Remember, I can never divide by 0 because 0 can't be on the bottom and that would be undefined. I can't figure out what that is. But if 0 is on the top, that doesn't mean I can't do it. What is 0 divided by divided by 2?
0.
It's just 0. And so that's how I would get the point 0. Anytime there's a 0 on top, it's always going to be 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. 0 divided by 4 is 0. I can have a 0 on top, I just can't have a 0 on the bottom. And so my midpoint of that would be -2, 0. Does anybody have a question on those two? I'm not going to let you practice any of those before we move on to the second. Alright, so flip to the second page. We're going to do 6 and 7 at the top of this page. And then you're going to do 8 on your own before we go back and do the very top part with the distance formula. But on this, if you look, this time it says finding a missing endpoint. So we're still going to be using the midpoint on this, but I'm not going to be using the midpoint formula because if I read number 6, first of all, I have a segment here, and that's what, with the midpoint formula, I was finding the middle of this segment, right? So I'd have to find the midpoint, and that would have gave me whatever this point is, which means these two pieces are going to equal, right? If I have a midpoint, that means it's splitting that segment in half, so this half would have to be the same as this half, right? But now if I look at what it's asking on number 6, it says find the coordinates of A if M is the midpoint. M is the point -1, 2. So this point is at -1, 2. I have the segment AB, so my endpoints are A and B. B has the coordinates of 3, -5. It wants me to find A. The reason I can't use the midpoint formula to find A, if I was to use the midpoint formula between M and B, it would give me the middle of M and B, right? A is all the way over here on this side. So I can't use the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula only finds the midpoint. I already have the midpoint, so I can't use it. But what I do know, let's say this was Burger King, this was McDonald's, and this was Arby's. And for instance, let's just say McDonald's is halfway between Burger King and Arby's. If I'm going from Burger King to Arby's and I stop at McDonald's, I've made it halfway, right? So however far I travel from here to here, I have to travel that same distance from McDonald's to get to Arby's. And why I'm saying that is because that is how much your x and y values are going to change. They have to change the same amount. So the first thing I do is look at my x. My x on B is 3, right? So I'm going to go to my x for my m. You always stay with the same letter, or the same coordinate. From 3 to negative 1, does that go up or down? Down. How far do I have to go down to get to negative 1 from 3? Down 4, right? So I go 3, I go down 3 to get to 0, then I have to go down 1 more to get to negative 1. So that's down 4, so that's minus 4. So I did 3 minus 4 to get to negative 1. I have to do the same thing to get to the x for A, so that's negative 1. I go down 4. What's down 4